Welcome everyone, this is Jennifer and I am very glad you're here. So I know a lot of us have products sitting on our shelves or in our drawers that we just don't reach for often anymore. And I think one of the best ways to be creative is to use what you have in new ways. So I thought I'd do a few more videos sharing ideas for that. Today, I'm talking about how to use pastes and gels of lots of different kinds creatively by incorporating it with your stamping. This is a fun way to really step up your images and get a really fun new look from them. I will demonstrate these ideas with lots of different gels and pastes, so hopefully you have something on hand that you can try too. Usually folks use gels and pastes along with background stencils. However, today, I'm using them with stencils that are meant to color in stamped images. Many companies are offering more and more products like this. A good example is this from Altenew. This is the Craft Your Life Always Sunshine Kit. I really like Altenew's kits because they come with tools that can be used over and over again. For example, this kit has a 6x8 stamp set, many layering stencils, a large coordinating die, and an embossing folder. Now, most of the stencils can be used to color in the image that you see over on the right, but notice there are also layering stamps in that set to color it also. So this particular set gives you lots of detail to your coloring. If you want to, you could just use the outline and watercolor it or color it freehand. Lots of different options here. I like that the guide that comes with the stamp set makes it easy to figure out what stencils go with what image. And these stencils are numbered, so you can easily find the guide. The cool thing about this particular kit is it also includes a large 3D embossing folder, and some of the stencils line up with that, so you can easily color your textured backgrounds. I will demonstrate that a little later in this video. It's super cool, but first we're going to start with adding some textures to our stamped images using this kit. But remember, you can do this with whatever stamps you have, and if you don't have stencils that line up with your stamps, I'll give you some other ideas in this video too. So I'm starting out by stamping this large image with Obsidian black ink from Altenew. This is a detailed pigment ink that stamps super crisp and super dark. And if you add clear embossing powder to it right away, you can heat emboss it. So this will give us a nice raised image. Whenever I use stencils over a stamped image, I really try to do the heat embossing so I don't have to worry about smearing any ink or waiting for it to dry. After I did the heat embossing, I'm using the coordinating die to cut it out. I love that this image is large, could be used on a 5x7 card, slimline, whatever size you want. And I'll show you how I allow this image to hang off the card in a bit. The reason I chose to die cut this image before doing the stenciling is that I can easily stick this die cut onto a sticky mat, which holds it in place, and then I can line up the stencil, and the sticky mat also holds that in place. It's really a great time saver, and these sticky mats clean nicely. There are a few out there. This is the one from Brutus, Monroe. Now, I am following the guide to figure out what lines up with what, but it's pretty easy to figure out. There are a few different images on this stencil, a few different openings that go with different parts. If you have a hard time with that, there are a few things you can do. Like right here, I could mask off the other openings on this stencil, but I really didn't feel a need to here. These were pretty easy to figure out. But if you really struggle with figuring out what openings on stencils line up with what images you're stenciling on, like whatever stamped image, what you can do is cut up the stencil. You could cut this stencil up into 4 pieces and then write on it with a Sharpie what it goes with. Just cutting them apart really makes it a lot easier to line up and figure out with less confusion. I decided not to do that in this video, but I'll show that in a future video. Cutting them up doesn't harm them. You can always tape them down in place. Sometimes I think cutting them is actually easier. For example, on this stencil, there are many openings to color in different images. And there are engraved lines to separate them and a number so you can figure out what goes with what. But what you could do here is cut along those engraved lines, which will cut apart each of the stencil openings and make them separate. That way you can just grab what you need and stencil as you go. Here I'm having to line it up, making sure I don't get ink in some of the other openings where I don't want to. I don't have any trouble with that because I have some small ink blending tools here. But if you struggle with layering stencils, don't be afraid to cut them apart, especially when it's for inking in different images like this one. Now, when I do my inking over the stencils, I like to use different blending brushes. There are a lot of blending brushes out there. I'm using a variety from Altenew today. I just choose whatever size brush best suits the image I'm inking over. Now, if it's super tiny, I like to use a detail brush. If it's a bigger opening, I like to use my big blending brushes. I'll link to them all below so you can see the different options, but use what you have. If you only have a big blending brush, just be sure to mask off the other areas so you don't get ink where you don't want it. And look how beautiful that looks as is. And the best part is with this particular kit, there are stamp layering images that'll add even more detail to these flowers and leaves. But first I want to ink up all the other flowers and leaves on the image, so that will be complete. Now I decided to do a different color here. You could do each of these flowers a different color, maybe even a rainbow, but I decided to keep this simple with yellow and blue flowers alone. Now these again are easy to line up. A bunch of them line up at once. And it's easy to figure out because there is an engraved line between the different areas on the stencil. I do appreciate when companies put multiple images on one stencil because that saves us money. If they did each image on a different stencil, it may be a little bit easier to figure out, but it would definitely cost us more in the end. So anytime you see stencils with lots of images on one stencil, or a die set with lots of little dies included in the middle that you have to cut apart, that's just the company's way of trying to give us more bang for our buck, and I really appreciate that. All right, so here I'm just using different colors of greens and yellows to fill in the rest of the image. Again, the guide makes it easy to follow. And then they also include these little areas for the center of the flower. Some of these you could skip, and if you find it easier, you could use markers to color it in, which I'll demonstrate a little bit later. But look at how beautiful that is already. But this set, as I told you, comes with some layering images to add details to the flowers and leaves. So I simply picked up my sticky mat and I put it right into my stamping tool, which is super handy. It'll hold the die cut in place as we stamp on it. I'm lining up the detail stamp images from the kit with the leaves, and look at how that just makes that pop even more. So sometimes you get a stamp set with layering images. Sometimes you get a stamp set and there are stencils to color them in to give that layered look. But in this case, it has both. So you could skip one or the other, doesn't matter, but when you use them all together, you get beautiful detail as you see here. I know I'm going through this stamping quickly, but it is very easy to line up and to do, and you can follow the guide. And I really want to focus on how to step up these images with textures and paste, which I'll show you next. So look at that beautiful, bold detail. Okay, now it's time to step this up by adding some paste to it. I thought I'd use glitter paste because I think a lot of us out there have this and forget to use it. Now this will be added to our big flower and our big leaves. And I'm using the stencil opening that is meant to add detail to those flowers. So the glitter paste won't cover the entire flower, just parts of it. Now there are so many glitter pastes out there. There's the Tonic Nouveau glitter paste, Gina K Glitz glitter gel, which I use quite often. But today I thought I'd use one I haven't used in a while, and that is the Lawn Fawn Fairy Dust stencil paste. You want anything that is clear and has the glitter in it. Any kind of clear product, because if you use a white product or a colored product, you will cover the color below. So this is a clear iridescent paste, and I'm just spreading it over that stencil opening. Doesn't have to be perfect application. You're just putting clear glitter down. I immediately clean off my stencil, my little palette knife, and then close the jar. And we'll give this some time to dry. After it's had time to dry, I can move on to the leaves. The reason you want it to dry is you don't want to smush the gel paste that you've already put down when you put the stencil on top. So once again, I'm putting the glitter paste over the leaf detail openings, and then I will clean that up and let it dry. I will also add some glitter paste to the yellow flowers, but I did skip the other little leaves. This shows another way you can use your layering stencils with your coordinating stamped images. I always like to find more ways to use them, and you can see how easy it is to do. If you do not have coordinating stencils for a stamped image, I'll talk about that a little later. Now for this, it's a big image, so I glued it onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card, but I left my images hanging off the edge, and I'll put it in a bigger envelope, which I'll talk about in a moment. But first, look at that shine that we have on our flowers and leaves. It just steps up this card so much, makes that bold color stand out even better. I decided to keep the sentiment very simple and just stamp hello in that little nook there between the leaves. And I stamped I appreciate your kindness in the inside. I'll show you what stamp set that is from a little bit later on. Now this is a slightly bigger envelope. This is an A6 envelope, the white one is. Normally I use A2, which this peach one is, but this won't fit because I left my images hanging off. So I'll use the A6, which is a bit bigger, and that allows this card to fit in it. I recommend getting some A6 envelopes. The postage is the same, and it allows you to have a little more room in your envelope, especially when you have some pieces hanging off the side like this. So with this example, I showed how to use a clear glitter paste with layering stencils on a stamped image. And here is the stamp set that I used for the sentiments. I got the hello from there, and then also the sentiment for the inside. I will be using this stamp set and stencils later in this video, so stay tuned for that. But first, I wanted to get more from this kit that I just showed you, the Always Sunshine kit. I thought it'd be fun to take the stamped image that's large and cut it down so I end up with 2 smaller images, and I can use those to make more cards. I also wanted to demonstrate some other gels and pastes that work great for this technique. So off screen, I did this heat embossing and coloring with the stencils and lots of different colors of ink. So this is the same process I went through before with the blue and yellow image. But this time I'm cutting apart that little viney part so that I have the 2 different images to use on 2 different cards. This is something that is really beneficial about large images. You can cut them down to get smaller images and use them in different ways. Let's start with this cluster of flowers here on my sticky mat. I have really been wanting to show you the Simon Hurley Lunar paste. This is such a great product, and I haven't had a chance to use it in videos yet, but this is an introduction here. Now this Lunar paste is a really smooth gel that is so easy to apply. It's great for background techniques over regular stencils. You can even go direct to the paper and spread it out and get beautiful shine. But here I'm using my finger to apply it over the detail opening of this flower stencil. And I chose a color of Lunar paste that matched our inking. So now we have this beautiful kind of plum color shine to our floral image. A great way to use this product in a different way. The colors are really beautiful, so it was easy to find something that matched my project. Now I'll just give that a little bit of time to dry, and I'll show you the final result a little bit later. But the shine is just gorgeous. All right, now let's demonstrate another product you can use. I just wanted to show you lots of examples in hopes you have a similar product on hand that you can try. So here is another flower image. This one I did in the same colors, but I'm doing a different product on top. This is a pearl gel. There are many different products like this on the market. This one I'm also using my finger to apply. This is thicker, but it works great for this too. And I chose like a pearl color so that I could just add a pearly shine to the color of ink behind it. I will use a cloth to wipe off the excess because I don't want to block the color behind it, but rather add the pearl look to it. So it's a very thin layer. It's hard to pick up the shine in the video, but in real life, it really just adds a nice soft shine. Now another product you can put over your images is a translucent texture paste. My favorite is from Holtz. I love all of his pastes. He's got lots of different options. This is just kind of like a clear gel that you can use. Now you could just put the clear gel on and let it dry and it'll add beautiful textured shine to your images. But I'm going to step that up a bit. So here you can see me just spread this over it. Doesn't really have to be even, it doesn't matter. Just always be sure to clean the stencil, the tools, and close the jar as soon as you can. So now this is wet, and it looks white. It goes on white, but it'll dry clear. Over this, I'm putting Holtz Rock Candy Glitter, which is an excellent glitter because it doesn't have color to it. It's just super sparkly. just adds like this glisten to your images. So I'm going to let all of these dry. I'll show you the results in a moment. But first, remember how we cut off part of the image? There's a little black line from the stem that was coming out. All you need to do is take a white gel pen and cover that up, and no one will ever know. So this looks like a standalone image and die cut. It's a pretty cool way to stretch your products. All right, here are the completed cards I made. Very simple designs. On each of them, I used the embossing folder on the background for the white piece. I'll show you that folder in a moment. And I also used sentiments from the Tulip stamp set that I showed you a bit before. Now this is the example where I used the translucent paste along with the rock candy glitter, and this is my favorite of the three. I love that rock candy. I feel like it adds incredible sparkle without changing the color of the image below. It's not like an iridescent glitter that picks up different colors. Definitely my favorite. Now this one is the pearl that I put on very lightly, so it just adds a little bit of shine. By the way, I only did this on the main flower. I didn't change any of the other parts of the image. So there you can see that pearly shine to it. I know many people have pearl gels. This is another way to use it. All right, now the last one is the Lunar paste from Hurley. I really like this one too because that purple matches our image nicely. If I wanted it to look a little lighter, I could have put on a lighter layer. In other words, apply it with my finger over the stencil, then use a dry cloth to buff off the excess. But I like that this is a little bit thicker and gives such gorgeous shine. I'll be sure to use this product in future videos because it really works well for many different things. All right, so there are 3 cards using 3 different gels or pastes on top of our floral image. And thankfully, I have leftover pieces I can use on other cards too. Just as a reminder, the full image is that blue and yellow card, and then we cut it down to get these 2 pieces. So I have these leftover kind of floral viney pieces that I can use on another card. I ran out of time today, but I think it'd be cool to have the 3 different vines kind of hanging from the top of the card with the sentiment along the bottom. All right, before I share more examples of adding paste over stamped images, I wanted to pause and use the embossing folder that's in that Always Sunshine kit that I've been using in this video. And it has the coordinating stencils. So I'm going to use some gels and paste on top of that too. I'm crazy about this because of the results that it gives in real life and because it's pretty easy to do. We'll be using that embossing folder, a 3D embossing folder from Altenew. Now I know different folders need different sandwiches, so I wanted to show you something new that is a huge time saver. I usually in my videos use my Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cut machine. It never fails me. They recently came out with the Spellbinders Universal Plate System. This is brilliant. On the platform of this, it tells you some different sandwiches you can use with different products. It also comes with cutting plates, so you can just use these 3 together as you traditionally would in your die cut machine to do die cutting. But all of these other plates and shims are so that you can easily use your machine with different embossing folders that are out there on the market. I don't know if you've noticed, but different company embossing folders have different thicknesses. So this is very handy because they have a guide on their website, which I just printed out to keep in my craft room. And I can look at that guide, and when I'm using a particular embossing folder, I know what sandwich to use. For example, here, I'm using an Altenew 3D embossing folder. So I looked on the guide and it said what shims to use, and I'll do that exact sandwich to get the perfect result. I used to have to experiment each time to figure out what sandwich worked using different metal or cardstock shims. This is just a time saver if you're interested. All right, now for this particular folder, I have a piece of cardstock. I'm putting a little bit of moisture on the front and the back just so that it embosses really nicely and doesn't crack. So I'll put the cardstock into the embossing folder. For an Altenew 3D folder, I read on that chart that you use the platform, this thin F shim, then you put your embossing folder and then the D adapter plate on top. Again, just following that chart. Then I'll run this through my die cut machine. It goes through like butter and I get a beautiful deep impression. So this white background is what I used on the background of my cards before, but now I want to show you how to step this up using stencils and some pastes. Now this Always Sunshine kit that I showed you at the beginning, it has the layering stencils that filled in those stamped images, which I demonstrated, but there's also layering stencils that allow you to color in the textured or raised area of this embossing folder background. It's pretty easy to line up. You just find the leaf that lines up with the leaf, and then you add the color. So all of the raised areas will grab the color when the stencil's on top. I just used a variety of green colors and a blending tool, and I put a little bit of a pool color towards the top area of the background. I really appreciate that companies are coming out with stencils that line up with embossing folders too, so you can get the color in those select areas. However, if you have an embossing folder where there aren't stencils that line up with them, you could just use markers to add color where you want it, so just add color to the leaves. Another option is to create a mask by cutting around the shapes, laying that over your embossing folder background, and doing your inking. These stencils just make it easy, but you can definitely figure out ways to add color to the raised areas without them. So here you can see how I'm just applying different colors of green. I'm going to kind of skip through some of this because it's all just lining up and adding ink. In the end, you have all the raised areas with color on it, and that color, that ink, enhances the details that it has too. So it enhances like the veins in the leaves too. Now let's add some shine to this. I thought I'd use the Fairy Dust glitter paste from Lawn Fawn that I used on my first example and applied that over the stencil. So I'm putting kind of a thin layer on it. So basically I'm just adding glitter paste over all of the leaves. The fun thing is some of the glitter paste kind of settles into the dimension of the leaves, making it stand out even more. If you don't have a stencil, once again, to line up with your embossing folder background, you can use your finger to apply that glitter paste just to the raised areas. But it definitely is easier to do with a stencil that lines up. I'll show you the results of that once it dries. But first, let's create another. This one, I inked the background first, as I did before, but we're going to use metallic rub-ons over the raised areas. The nice thing about this technique is you don't need the layering stencils, but it does make it easier. If you are new to metallic rub-ons, I have a video up here on the top right that is worth checking out. This is a product that has been around forever, and many of us have had it in our crafty stash. Time to bring it back to life. Here, this is super easy. You just put the product on your finger and rub it onto the raised areas. The stencil makes it easier because you can stay only in the raised areas. But if you don't have a stencil, you just want to add it only to the colored parts. And this will add a metallic shine that is just really cool. I ended up using some silver and some kind of bronzy gold. And the final result gives kind of a colorful yet vintage feel that is just beautiful in real life. I wish you could see it. And it doesn't take long to do. So we have two backgrounds that we created with the same embossing folder and stencils and same color of inks, but they have different looks. One has glitter and one has that vintage kind of metallic look. I didn't want to cover up much of the background, so all I added was a few embellishments and a sentiment. On one, I used the Altenew Fancy Greeting stamp set, an old favorite of mine. The Just For You fits right in the nook of the leaves. So I gold heat embossed that, and see how it fits in that little spot there? I always like to have my sentiments kind of tucked in to my image or right on top of it because it kind of draws your eye there as opposed to kind of having it floating out in space. To match the gold and silver I added on the leaves, I added some matte gold and silver baubles here and there, but you could skip that if you want to. And you can see how that metallic rub-on enhances the texture of the leaves, but also leaves that beautiful shine. Now for the other background where I used the glitter paste on the leaves, I added a sentiment using the Altenew Fancy Enjoy die. They have lots of these. There's a thanks and a hello that I use a lot in videos, and now there's an enjoy. I cut that from black cardstock and glued it towards the bottom right, and then I added some white iridescent pearls scattered along the leaves. So there, as I tilt it in the light, you can see the bit of shine and sparkle that we get thanks to that glitter gel. This is a pretty simple card design, and I feel like adding the rub-ons or the gel kind of steps it up and adds some interest. After trying a few different gels and pastes with this technique, I decided I liked most using the translucent paste, the clear paste, with the rock candy glitter on top. So I'm doing another card and really using it to make it sparkle. This is another bundle from Altenew that's new, and I really like it. I used the sentiments earlier. It's the Altenew Build a Garden Tulips and Friends set. Now, the bundle includes this 6x8 stamp set and coordinating layering stencils, and it comes with a mini blending brush. There is also an add-on die available. I'll have that all linked below. Here are the layering stencils that allow you to add color to that large image. But this also has some detail layering stamps, so you can really add all the detail like we did on our first example. Here's the guide with lots of examples. I really like this because it's large, so it fills a card easily, and it can be used on a larger card. I know many people like 5x7 cards. I'll be stamping the image twice to really cover most of the front of the card. So I have my stick and stamp mat, and I'm placing my cardstock right there in the center of my stamping tool. This will allow me to have the stamp hang off the edge. I'm using my anti-static powder tool because I'll be clear heat embossing. I'm stamping the image in the bottom right corner with black Altenew Obsidian ink. This is one that's great for heat embossing, or you can just let it dry. I then am moving my cardstock down so that I can take the same image, but upside down, and place it on the top left corner. I'm leaving a gap there between so that I can put a long stamp sentiment a bit later. Once I have it positioned, I'll stamp this also. Then I will take my cardstock out of the stamping tool, add clear embossing powder, which you can skip if you want to, but I really like the results. Another thing you can skip if you want is adding these little parts of stamped images in the corner. I wanted it to look like the entire front of the card was covered, except for the gap for the sentiment. So I'm using the corner or edge of my image to stamp in the empty corners on my background. Again, you can totally skip this, but I really feel like it completes it, and it gives a completely different look for this large single stamped image. After doing that stamping, I'll add the clear embossing powder and heat set it. So this bundle comes with the layering stencils, and now it's time to just add the inking using them. These are very easy to line up, and I like that each flower has a different stencil. So you can make each of the flowers a different color if you wanted to. Now I made all 3 of mine the same, but you do have that option. It's easy to figure out which of these openings lines up with which flower, but there is that guide available. This is another one where you could cut all of these openings apart with scissors and use them individually, if that makes more sense and is easier for you. To save time in the video, I am again not showing all of the inking over the stencils. Just follow the guides, follow the shapes. It's pretty easy to do. But this does have the different layering images, so you can build that look of dimension. After doing the main tulips and leaves, I decided to skip the stencils for the little flower clusters around it. Because I have them in different areas, I just thought it'd be faster to add color with a marker. But there is the stencil to add all that detail if you want to. Now I'm kind of mimicking the look of these layered tulips. I'm not taking much effort to get a beautiful blended result. I just put down light yellow, a darker yellow, and then brown in the center. Very easy, and really you don't have to use the stencils if you don't want to. Now I'm using the layering stamped image that is in the set that allows you to add this darker detail to the tulips, which really makes them pop. I mean, you can see the difference between the top and the bottom here. This I'm doing in a little bit of a darker color so that when we put our clear paste on top, it really will still stand out. Now it's time for the fun of adding the glitter. I'm using the layering image of the tulip, the opening that doesn't cover the entire thing. And I'm using the Tim Holtz translucent texture paste, which is that clear product that's very easy to apply. It goes down white, but it will dry clear. After I apply some over this first tulip, I will sprinkle on that rock candy glitter. I'm telling you, if you like a little sparkle, but not something super crazy in your face glittery, the rock candy is definitely a good option for you. It even comes, I think, in a bigger bottle, but I've been using this for years and I'm glad I remembered to use it again. I went digging through my old products because it gives just the right amount of sparkle. I also wanted to show you how you can add sparkle to stamped images if you don't have a paste or the stencils to line up. You can also use a liquid glue. Here I'm using Gina K Connect liquid adhesive, and I'm putting little dots of it here and there on those little flower clusters. Then I added the rock candy glitter and let that dry. That will also be another fun way to add some sparkle to your images. Now, the tricky part about this technique is in this particular card, each tulip is a different stencil. So you have to apply the texture paste over one flower, add the glitter, let it dry, then do the next one. So there's some drying time in between, but I just went and did other crafting and came back to it. It doesn't take too long to dry. And I think the results are definitely worth it. Look at that sparkle that doesn't change the color of the flowers, but really enhances it. I think this is especially awesome on this card because it is pretty much a one-layer card, so it just adds interest to it. Little texture, little shine, not much bulk. I really like this stamp set and using it for this design, so I plan to make more with different sentiments in the center. All right, now I just wanted to show you another stamp set that would be great for this technique, just because I think the more you see, the better it is to find something in your stash. This one's also from Altenew. I ran out of time to use it. Has a large stamped image and then the coordinating stencils. This would be great for this technique. You can ink up the flowers in whatever colors you want. You could even do rainbow across it. Then you use the most detailed layering stencil to add glitter paste or a pearl shine on top. So look through your stash. Chances are you have something you can use along with your gels and paste creatively to add that bit of shine. And remember, if you don't have coordinating stencils, just use your finger to apply the products here and there on your stamped images. All right, if you are interested in these supplies, they are linked below in my YouTube description. And at the end here, I link to a couple other related videos. I always thank you for spending time with me. I know my videos are long, but I appreciate it and hope you learned a thing or two. See you soon with another video.